even though I'm not a hip-hop channel, this is not a hip-hop channel, I'm going to talk about how in the 90s, hip-hop was the wild, 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 wild west. That's going to be topic number one. I'm going to give you a rundown so you know what's coming. I heard that's a big thing. I'm going to talk about beat jacking. If you make beats, you know what that is. You know the phrase. Did your beat get jacked? Did someone jack that beat? That's where that comes from. I'm going to get into that a little bit. I'm going to talk about, I got the yellow pad happening. I'm going to talk about all the implications of that, making beats and what happens. How do you avoid getting them jacked, or can you, in the wild, 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 wild west? A little bit on the sample debate. A little bit on statute of limitations. That's going to be a hip-hop story from the Wayback Machine, from the hip-hop time machine. Even though I don't know anything about hip-hop. I'm going to talk about my mix demo, my mix elements that I'm doing. On the previous video, I kind of started this. And if you watched it, you know. If you didn't watch it, you don't know and should know. This is officially the first time I'm really talking out loud today. And it is 8 o'clock on Tuesday. It just happens when you work alone and you are alone that particular day and the phone doesn't ring, so you don't have to talk on the phone. I didn't talk to anybody at the dollar store today, so I didn't really talk at all. Text, email, yes, of course. And so since 5:50 or 5:45 a.m., I've been up, and this is the first time I'm talking. So the voice sounds a little sketchy. That's why. Thank you to you guys for the buy me a coffee, and this is iced coffee, which I've got like a caramel iced coffee thing going. I'll cut out the slurp sound. Some guy commented about that. Like 10 videos back, he says, I almost unsubbed because of something that happened at 16 minutes and 20 seconds. I was like, well, what was it? Oh, you drank your coffee and it sounded like it was like right in my headphones. I'll work on it. All right, so on this 90s hip-hop thing, the beat jacking. This came up on, I was on EA Keys' channel last week. I think I was on there for 2 hours, which is crazy. But as you can sort of tell, I can talk about this for forever. If I choose to talk that day, I can talk about it forever. So then I was on his channel. We did a collab. We talked about a million different things. Hip-hop related, mixing related, recording related. He's very big on his sound coming from his machines and his analog gear. He's a big analog gear guy. I would say he is more of an analog gear guy than even I am. And then I did the Zoom call. I popped in on the Zoom call that he invited me on. And I think that's a thing that's, if you're into beat making and if you're into learning things about the music business and production and things like that, you might want to get over there and sub to EA Ski so that you can get on the Zoom call that he does on Saturday morning. There was 51 guys on this. I think it was all guys, but it's open to women. There was 51 players on this thing, and just chopping it up about beats and what the struggle and how to get your stuff sounding good, how to get it in the right hands, who's going to listen to it. So one guy brought up a question. He said, I'm just getting into this. Like, what do you do about, how do you protect yourself from getting your beats stolen or jacked, And a couple guys answered, and did I pay attention? Yes, I did, but I don't remember exactly what they said. And then Ski asked me to chime in. I told him what I thought, which was, you're going to get jacked, especially as an up-and-comer. Some ways to avoid getting jacked to some degree would be if you're developing the act or you're working with the talent early enough so that you're both sort of at the same level, then, you know, you might not necessarily be on like a major label or something like that, but you'll get your production out there into the wild and you won't get jacked by someone that's quote unquote a few rungs up on you. So I used to see this all the time in the wild, wild, wild west of New York City hip hop in the 90s, in that I'd be on a session, doesn't even matter who the name was. Typically the artist was working with, maybe with the producer, but more than likely the A&R people. And the A&R was always meeting with producers, trying to find new beats for their artists. So the phone would ring from reception, and they'd say, so-and-so's here, he's coming to see one of the guys on the session. Yeah, send him in. So this guy was coming in to sell beats. And this is, 1996, 7, whatever you want to call it. So in comes the dude. Maybe he's got a CD or a DAT, digital audio tape. More than likely, he probably had a CD from most of the time. And no matter what we were doing, typically, especially depending on the clout of the producer, if it was someone with a big name, he would be able to stop everything that was happening at the session. Like if we were in the middle of a vocal, maybe not so much. We would kind of get to the end of that verse and say, all right, blah, blah, blah is here. Let's pop it. Now, most of the time, I would bail out of the room for this next 35, 45-minute beat banging session because basically the volume would go all the way up. A bunch of guys would be in the room arguing about whether they thought a beat was hot or not. They would kind of do it right in front of the guys sometimes. And then, they'd be partaking in whatever social recreation they were partaking in. So it was a good time for me to clear my ears, clear my eyes, clear my sinuses, and get out of the room. Sometimes I would hang out. Or sometimes I would come in towards the tail end of it. And like I said, depending on who the person was and what their status was, they would either sell a beat right there and be like, yeah, come back tomorrow and, drop that beat. Tony will record it to tape. We have this room tomorrow at 8 o'clock, so come in at 8, lay that beat. Or they would say, we don't want anything. But then there were the moments with some of the unscrupulous guys who may or may not be in trouble right now, hint, hint. They would listen to a beat or a string of beats, and if the kid didn't want to give up the beat for some low number, let's just say, and I don't remember what those numbers were, but I think they could have been anywhere from like $500 to $1,500 to just sell the beat. If you weren't a big deal. If the person came in and said like, yeah, no, I don't want to sell my beat for some low number, I'm taking it elsewhere, it was not unheard of that as soon as they left the room, unscrupulous guy number one would send somebody out to buy or go to the Tower Records and pick up the CD with the track that this guy had sampled, and he would sort of, in no uncertain words, say to one of the other producers that was in his camp, make a beat, make the beat with that, make that beat with that sample. It happened. Guys would get jacked. Sometimes you got to go in low. In those cases, you got to get in, accepting the fact that if you don't, you're probably going to get jacked. So how do you play it out? How do you weigh it? How do you make that call? Because it's not a matter of you keeping your integrity or something like that. It's you enter the lion's den. You're either going to figure out a way to get out of there alive, or some of your meal's going to get taken. It was rough, and it's still rough, and you could still get jacked. People are going to hear your stuff on the internet, or if you're doing things like that, if you're hawking beats anywhere, someone's going to get influenced by it or basically steal the idea. It's one of those things that's never ending until you get to the position where you're big enough to where you can't get jacked. You probably are going to get jacked. The sample debate, some of the guys in the comments, we've talked about this, that, hip hop is not the same without samples, and when samples became expensive to clear, then people went away from using samples and they were like recreating things or creating soft versions of the real sample. I think there's going to be a little bit of a sway with that in that a lot of these catalogs that are getting purchased by big groups or big labels, those catalogs then are going to be up for grabs for sampling. So in other words, if you're, and I don't know all the particulars, but just say you're Kendrick Lamar and whatever label you're on, they buy Bruce Springsteen's catalog or whatever, and I'm just giving you names out there, or like Steely Dan's catalog, who used to be really expensive to sample. So if your label now owns Steely Dan's catalog, then there's a very good possibility you're going to be able to have access to sampling whatever you want. That landscape is changing, and I'm not totally hip to all the particulars on that, but I think that is in play. I'm going to give you, I have a thing, statute of limitations. You guys like the old hip-hop stories. Here's one for you, for the books. So I did, it had to be 1996 because, and we finished in 97 before Biggie passed. I did the Lil Kim hardcore album. Basically, almost all of it, recording it, and I mixed at least half of it. I don't remember exactly which songs I mixed, more or less. I know which ones I kind of know which ones I mixed. But anyway, the first song on the record is called Big Mama Thing. That's produced by Stretch Armstrong. And this was like one of those epic session moments that stick in your brain forever. And now we're talking, 28 years later or whatever. I'm not going to, if I hurt some feelings by telling the story, that's how it goes. I feel as though I've waited long enough and I'm allowed to tell the story now. No one's going to get hurt. So Stretch Armstrong has this beat. I never heard of Stretch Armstrong at the time, and I don't know that he did many beats after that, but he had this one great sample-based beat for Big Mama Thing. And during this session, Lil Kim wrote her rhymes. I'm going to go along with that. But on occasion, someone may or may not have laid a reference vocal for her. On this occasion, I don't believe that we had a reference vocal. And if you know the beat, it goes dun, 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 dun. That's me singing. So check it out when you get a chance, Big Mama Thing. So here's the thing. All I remember from this session is this. That was me counting Kim in, possibly 200 times to come in on the first verse. I don't remember if this happened on the second and third verse, but I know it was the first verse. And we were on tape. So you'd have to hit rewind, locate, back to the top of the verse, hit play, and then it'd be a dance, one, two, three, four. Okay, that was Kim's cue. Kim did not hear the count. She had her own interpretation on this particular song. And when I tell you that we tried recording her vocal multiple days, not just the first day, not just one day, we came back different days and said, like, all right, maybe she'll get it now. It was just a brain freeze or a mental block that she had. She heard the beat a certain way, and everybody else heard it a different way. There were guys falling on the floor every time I would count her in. And regardless, I don't know if she was even, I guess she wasn't maybe looking at me or whatever, but sometimes she was, sometimes she wasn't. She'd be just a little off. She'd try and guess. But when she would go for her feel of when she felt the count in was working, she would be right on tempo, but starting at the wrong spot. So she was starting, from what I remember, 2 beats after the one. And this is before digital editing. We were analog, strictly analog. And I recorded her completely doing this verse in the wrong spot, playing off the wrong beat. And I had a little bit of a light bulb moment. I said, wait a minute, it comes around I think it was a 4-bar pattern, if memory serves. Or it may have been a 2-bar pattern, but I think it was 4. I came up with the idea that, wait a minute, if I run her voice through a digital delay, use the calculator, that's why I have that up there, to calculate how many milliseconds are in 2 beats, then I can delay her voice 2 beats and get it to be on the 1 of the next time the loop started. Then all I would have to do is fix the intro of the song by like just muting the intro until she came in the right way. So in other words, if she came in on bar 10 and we wanted it to be an 8-bar intro, then I would just, we would just mute the first bar. You know what I'm saying? There are ways to get rid of the beginning of the song so that you could line it up. And then you have to put the mix on the delay to 100% delay output so that you don't hear, you're not hearing a delay. You're just literally time shifting the vocal 2 beats later. Now, when I pulled this off, it was like more high fives than if the Knicks won the championship. I mean, guys were just jumping around the room in happiness that this song was finally, the puzzle was finally solved. And another part of the story is that, Kim wasn't around when I did this. And then I mixed the track, and she came in maybe a day later and heard it and did not notice that she was starting her rap was starting, or her verse was starting on the beat. She didn't notice. It was just one of those weird things. That's my Hip Hop Confidential on the non-hip hop channel, with the statute of limitations. I don't think I gave up too much stuff there. But anyway, thanks for the coffee, buy me a coffee things. I'm trying to start the whole channel membership thing, and it's 99 cents. So like, maybe you guys could join. I'm going to do stuff where like my demo stuff, particularly like the things that are like, hey, this is like, You know, I don't want every schmo on the internet finding my, you know, getting my little tips. I'd rather have my channel people get my tips, especially, and maybe we could have discussions on that. Because I know you guys won't be critical.